in Romania, the University College London School of Slavonic and East European Studies.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with us tonight. So I teach Romanian at UCL, and I'm also the academic coordinator for our language short course program that you hear a lot more in panel 2. And I'm the convener of the ProLang group, which is an interdisciplinary group that organizes events highlighting our 18 languages that we offer at CEAS from the region. The region being Eastern Europe, Southeast, Central, Baltic area, and Russia. ProLang stands for Policy Research Outreach in the field of language-based area studies. My current research interests cover Romanian as a heritage home and community language, diasporic variants of Romanian language and identity construction, and community shaping. Thank you everyone again for being here tonight, especially to the speakers. Tonight we run the third part of a series on Balkanism. The first event in November last year concentrated on the Balkans, its diasporas, and the stories of material culture in collaboration with the Balkanism platform founded by Arber Gashi, who will speak later. The second one in February on Eating the Balkans, language, cuisine, and cultural meaning, also in collaboration with Arber Gashi. And we also have one of the main speakers of the event there. And today we complete the series with an event on multilingualism in the Balkans and its diasporas in collaboration again with Balkanism, but also with the British Library. Especially Milan Gârba, a long-standing friend of CEAS. Yes?
Absolutely.
Milan learned Romanian with me many moons ago and still speaks it. Impressive.
Absolutely.
Tonight, our key speaker is Petros Karatsareas, reader in multilingualism and language contact at the University of Westminster. After the key speech, we'll have panel 1 of 3 other speakers that will introduce, when their turn comes, and then panel 2, where we'll talk more about CEAS and what we offer there. Petros, the floor is yours. Thank you. It's me.
Sorry. We have some water here for speakers. I wanted to say a couple of words about this event and our past events as well. So one more time, welcome to Balkan Day 3. The 3 Balkan Day events held in 2014, 2016, and now here in 2026 demonstrate a consistent commitment to celebrating and promoting Balkan culture. Over the last decade, we have watched our thematic focus gracefully shift from moving from broad questions of general identity towards specific linguistic and diaspora-led narratives. All 3 events have been hosted right here at the British Library, sharing a seminar structure of keynote speeches, panel discussions, and evening receptions designed to foster true connection between our participants and the audience. Yet, beneath the changing themes, a core shared goal remains across all these years: to challenge negative mainstream narratives, to counterbalance outdated perceptions of the region, and to shine a vivid spotlight on its rich literary and cultural achievements. To do this, each event has intentionally blended academic analysis with creative expression. Our programs consistently feature a vibrant mix of writers, translators, and academics. We also weave in visual and material culture, whether through the film screenings of 2014 and 2016, or the stunning displays of library collections in 2014 and today in 2026. Looking back Our first event in 2014, Creativity and Identity, focused on broad literary milestones and marked the centenary of the First World War. By 2016, a rich heritage of stories shifted our gaze towards deep Southeast Europe, examining the profound historical and cultural influence of Turkey on the region. This brings us to 2026. Today's event, Multilingualism in the Balkans, concentrates deeply on the linguistic landscape, focusing on marginalized languages, the diaspora, and explicitly anti-ethnonationalist ethos. This year, we are also incredibly proud to tie our gathering to the UCL 200 celebration, organizing this day alongside the UCL School of Slavonic and East European Studies SEAS Proland Group and the SEAS Library. While earlier events focused heavily on writers living or writing about the Balkan Peninsula itself, today's program explicitly prioritizes transnational mobility and the lived experiences of the Balkan diaspora. Balkan Day 3 is uniquely designed to broaden its reach and impact through four core areas. First, our deep engagement with diaspora communities. We are placing significant emphasis on the diaspora linguistic landscapes. We want to look beyond traditional historical accounts by highlighting the lived experiences of these communities, often through the lens of marginalized and non-standardized languages. By welcoming community organizers and discussing multilingualism as it is spoken, we aim to foster interethnic solidarity and create a dialogue that transcends national boundaries. Second, the promotion of our unique collections and services. A core objective today is to showcase the academic and material resources available for study in the region. Today features a dedicated display of selected material from the UCLC's library collection. Our library colleagues will also be discussing the specific challenges and the immense importance of managing these multilingual collections, highlighting the library's vital role in regional studies. Third, our educational mission. We feature a focused presentation on the SEAS Languages Short Courses program, which offers instruction in 18 different languages, firmly positioning the institution as a primary center for learning Balkan languages. And fourth, engaging future generations. As part of the UCL 200 celebrations, this event looks resolutely forward. By promoting these language courses and making complex sociolinguistic theories accessible to wider public, we want to stimulate fresh interest in the region among new students and researchers. This focus on education is intended to cultivate a new generation of users and readers who appreciate the diverse and fertile creative space of the Balkans. Ultimately, today's event frames the Balkans as a fertile creative space defined by diverse cultural and linguistic repertoires. This is beautifully supported by our academic discussion on Balkan multilingualism and our display of historical materials, such as the first Slovenian grammar, which famously featured 4 different scripts. You can see that here, perfectly illustrating the region's long history of linguistic interconnectedness. And now it is my great pleasure to invite our first speaker, Dr. Petros Karatsereas, reader in multilingualism and language contact at the University of Westminster, to deliver our keynote speech Please welcome Dr. Karatseres.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be here today with you. It's a great honor for me. I'm just going to set my time there. So let me see if I can quite see, please. There we go. So I would like to start with a little bit of background to myself and to mention the event today. Is called Our Languages. So what are my languages and where do I get them from? And of course, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So you can see here a very brief history of my Balkan family. So my grandparents were born between 1920 and 1938, mostly in northern Greece, near the Albanian and Macedonian border, but also more centrally in Thessaly, and acquired varieties of Greek and Macedonia. If you know a little bit of Greek history, you'll know that northwestern Greece is a very troubled area during and after the Second World War. The Greek Civil War culminated in that area. My grandparents were caught up in the Greek Civil War, and between 1948 and 1949, they had to flee Greece as they were on the losing side. They found themselves in Hungary as Greek political refugees. My parents were born there in 1954 and 1960 in a Greek village called Belogiannis in honor of a Greek communist fighter. Not many people know about this village, but it's a village that was built by and for Greek political refugees in Hungary. So my family developed a repertoire consisting of Greek, Hungarian, and Macedonian as its languages. In 1981, my parents returned to Greece. They were not born in Greece, but they returned, so they are called repatriated Greeks from Hungary. And in 1983, I was born in Greece with this background, which was confirmed by 23andMe. So this is my DNA ancestry, which placed me exactly where my family is from without knowing nothing more about myself, which was quite amazing. So you see that what we know was a family history was sort of confirmed through the evil forces of genetic capitalism. So you see there photos of my family, my parents and grandparents in Hungary, Greece, and Tetopan of Macedonia, where my grandmother's family still lives. So this meant that multilingualism, and if you want, Balkan multilingualism, was an everyday reality in our family, in our household, in our home. From a very young age, I was exposed to everyday language contact phenomena between all these languages, borrowing of words, phrases, ways of saying things, switching from one language to the other as a casual matter. But at the same time, this brought with it ideologies of multilingualism. So my Greek-speaking grandfather once said to me about my father, who mixed Greek and Hungarian very routinely, that your father doesn't speak any language properly. Of course he does, but the type of mixing that my father routinely does is generally sort of frowned upon from a puristic point of view, that languages should be kept separate and not polluted. At the same time, I was exposed to the politics of multilingualism. My grandmother comes from an ethnic Macedonian-speaking background in the area of Florina, very close to the border, as I said. And when she spoke about herself, when she spoke Greek, or to a person who was ethnically Greek, she would say Melinida, I am Greek, I'm a Greek woman. But when she would talk to other Macedonian speakers, she would say Suma Gurtsia, I am from Greece. She wouldn't say Suma Gurchka or anything like that. So why would she say I'm Greek when speaking Greek, but I am from Greece when speaking Macedonian? And of course, our family, as you've just heard, has been mobile, forcibly displaced. So of course, language, mobility, migration, and identity have been also everyday occurrences in my family history. So my father, while he was living in Hungary, he was referred to as the Greek. But when he moved to Greece, he was routinely referred to as the Hungarian one. So in Hungary he was Greek, but in Greece he was Hungarian. So I have structured my contribution to today's event along these three themes: language contact, ideologies and politics of multilingualism, and language, migration and identity. Because the Balkans encapsulate all of this at the same time linguistically. So starting with language contact, I definitely recommend this recently published book, The Balkan Languages, written by Victor Friedman and Brian Joseph. It was published last year by Cambridge University Press. It's a massive volume of 1,000 pages, and it is available open access for free by Cambridge University Press. So you can scan the QR code and you'll find yourselves to the book, and it lists the wealth of information about the features that the Balkan languages have in common. Is something that I don't think any other work on the Balkan languages has ever achieved or will indeed ever achieve. So if you've studied even a little bit of linguistics, you will have seen perhaps this tree, the Indo-European language family tree. So you see there that the Indo-European languages belong to many different branches, and some of these languages, like Albanian and Greek, are branches in their own right. They are very different to each other and the rest of the languages. But also you have larger families like the Italic or Romance language family, or the Slavic language family. So what's happened in the Balkans is that the Balkans is the space where languages from at least 4 of these branches have been spoken by large numbers, by large populations. Of course, you have Iranian languages as well, the Romani varieties. You historically have had Germanic languages as well, but let's focus on these 4 big ones. So what is the language story? The language story is that the Italic, Slavic, Albanian, and Greek languages that have historically been spoken in the Balkans were spoken over a long period of time, at the same time, by the same people, in the same place, so that they developed a number of features, grammatical features, structural features, lexical features, that only themselves have in common, and not the other sister languages of those languages that have sister languages. So Slavic, for example, Southern Slavic, Macedonian, and Bulgarian, as we'll see, develop some features that other varieties of Balkan Slavic, like Slovenian, or further north, the varieties of Serbian, do not have. So this was called very early on the Balkan Sprachbund, the Linguistic League, a group of languages whose resemblances result from mutual influence. And Friedman and Joseph, in the recently published book, mentioned the 4N model. Why was this possible? This was possible through multilateral, multi-generational, neutral multilingualism. This means that people spoke each other's languages over a long period of time, stretching across multiple generations. This involved obviously intimate relationships, intermarriages, people growing up speaking many of these languages of the area. And this happened during the so-called Pax Ottomanica or Pax Ottomana, the socio-economic stability that characterized the Ottoman Empire in the 16th, 17th century, and it was abruptly disrupted by the emergence of nation-states in the Balkans, where borders were crossed, were drawn, and each nation-state developed its own ideologies. So what is a Balkanism? Of course, Balkanism is Argo Gashi's initiative, but also in linguistics, is a linguistic feature that results from the bi-multilingualism or multilingualism born of language contact that is common to 2 or more unrelated or only distantly related languages within the Balkans. The list is very long, and I urge you to make use of the open access possibility of Joseph and Friedman's book, where you can read about very, very many features. But today I only want to mention 3 very well-known ones. The first one is the loss of the infinitive and the replacement by finite forms. What does this mean? It means that historically all of these languages had something that worked as an infinitive. Yeah, I want to write, something equivalent to write. To write does not give you information about who is doing the writing, who the subject is. It's just the notion of writing. Now, all of the languages you can see on the slide have this infinitive and got rid of it. And instead, they use so-called finite forms, so verbs that you inflect. So in Greek, for example, you say θέλω να γράψω, I want that I write. You see in all of these languages, except for Balkan Turkish, a kind of marker that connects the two verbs. So this is something that all of these languages developed out of mutual influence that separated them from their sister languages. The other one is the loss of the future tense in single verbs. So all of these languages historically had ways of expressing the future tense, either by a single form or by using the present form or by using kind of periphrastic forms. And in all of these languages, those variations of the future were replaced by constructions that are based on the verb to want. Yeah, I want that I write, develop into I will write. And this is exactly what happened in English. The English future marker will comes from an Old English verb willen, which meant want. So you see that in all these languages, we have a future marker, do, va, sce, tha, je, ka, which comes from want. So you see here that all of these languages follow the same trajectory, the same grammatical evolutions from mutual contact, from mutual interaction. The definite articles are also very good, well-known and very relevant example. You know that Slavic languages generally don't have a definite article. The only two that do are Macedonian and Bulgarian, and that separates them from the other Slavic languages. Albanian didn't originally have a definite article. The Romanian and Romanian languages didn't originally have a definite article because Latin didn't have one. And you see that all those languages have definite articles that attach to the end of the word. Yeah, the definite article is a suffix that is attached at the end of the word. So again, you see that the grammar converged through the 4M model, multilateral, multi-generational, and mutual multilingualism. But of course, the most well-known case, or the most obvious one, is the lexical influence between all the different languages, and there's a wealth of words that have been borrowed from one language to the other, and on top of all of that, we have the lexical influence of Turkish or Ottoman Turkish. All of the languages of the Balkans borrowed words from Turkish, as well as suffixes, endings like ji, ju, meaning like a painter, or a driver. And you see that you find it in many different languages. You find it in words that were borrowed from Turkish wholesale, like boyaci, but also in native words like lovcia or duelciu. So you have this suffix being productively attached. So, moving on to ideologies and politics, with the rise of nation states and the codification of standard languages, the emergence of standard Greek, standard Serbian, standard Albanian, standard Macedonian, and Bulgarian a bit later, all of these effects of language contact were swiftly identified by language policymakers, and there were attempts in all of the languages in all the nation states to purify the Balkan languages by purging Turkish and, of course, other words, other loans, and looking internally, if you want, for native roots. So the modern Greek linguists looked into ancient Greek, naturally. The Slavic languages looked into Old Church Slavonic. Romanian looked to Latin, French, and Italian in an attempt to get rid of the influence not only of Turkish, but also of the other Balkan languages. So all the outcomes of centuries of mutual, multilateral, multi-generational multilingualism was sought to be expunged because it was a reminder of all those years, not only of the Ottoman influence and superiority, but also of the naturalness of interaction of Balkan speakers in everyday settings. So nation states sought to separate states from groups of people from one another. They sought to emphasize their differences and uniqueness. So obviously all those linguistic features that were borrowed from one language to the other would frequently serve as a reminder that, you know, we're pretty much the same. and would have been for so long. So in 1835, Skarlatos Vizantios wrote a dictionary of the Greek dialect, a Greek dictionary, and at the end he included 20 pages of lists of words that in his view should be expunged from the Greek language because they have been borrowed primarily from Turkish, but also from other languages too. And indeed that happened to some extent. So a lot of words like askeri for army, kazandizo to earn, or ondas for room were replaced by Greek origin and Greek sounding words, stratos, kerthizo, and domatio. Interestingly, in some cases, in Greek and in other languages, the Turkish words survived, but they became bad-sounding words. They became pejorative words. They became words that mean the exact same thing, but only if you want to emphasize it in a negative way. So there are two words for wall in Greek, tichos and douvari. Tichos is originally Greek, douvari is from Turkish. Tichos is the neutral word for war, but if you want to refer to war in a negative way, like if your family is arguing over four walls of a house in the village, you can say we've split our family in two for four douvari. Or if you walk into a room and everyone's smoking, you can say, what is this dumani? Yeah, not all the kapnos, because dumani has a negative connotation. And my favorite example is the word hali, which in Turkish means situation, but in Greek it means bad situation. So what is this awful situation? Hali, whereas in Turkish it's just situation. But of course, many words survived, many everyday meaning words, some abstract notions that Greeks proudly declare are untranslatable in other languages like meraki, which is from Turkish merak. A lot of these words remain. So all of these attempts to expunge words, the linguistic heritage, were not always successful. At the same time, there were attempts to expunge linguistic otherness in the Balkans. When the Greek nation-state borders were fixed, a number of non-Greek speaking communities, populations found themselves in the Greek nation-state speaking languages like Macedonian or Aromanian or Albanitica, which is a variety of Albanian, Turkish, Polmak, and others, Romani. Now, depending on the history of these groups, where they're found in geography, the least lucky of these groups were the ones that were found in bordering areas like northwestern Greece, which is sort of southern Macedonia, bordering northern Macedonia, then Yugoslavia. Speaking Macedonian, this is the background of two of my grandparents. They were considered to be national enemies of the state. In 1936, through the dictatorship of Ioannis Metaxas, it became forbidden to speak Macedonian in public. It was forbidden to sing in Macedonian, to have a Macedonian sounding name for yourself, for your family, for your village. And all of this has been documented by Tassos Kostopoulos in his book, The Forbidden Language, State Repression of the Slavic Dialects in Greek Macedonia. The other book you can see is by Sotiris Beletsas on the Vlach language. Sotiris Beletsas is a Vlach speaker, a Romanian speaker, and he was prosecuted, he was drawn into the Greek courts because he circulated leaflets about linguistic diversity in Greece. Greece has not signed or ratified the European Charter for the Protection of Minority Languages. So Sotiris Beletsas, in a Vlach event, distributed some leaflets, and he was brought to the court. Hence the title of his book, The Vlach Language Before the Firing Squad. This situation is still pretty much ongoing in Greece. My PhD student, Christina Florach, who's here with us today, is doing her dissertation on linguistic interactions and minoritization between Macedonian-speaking communities post-PRESPA, post the signing of the PRESPA agreement. And this is an excellent photograph that she's kindly allowed me to use to you today, to show to you today. This is a primary school, amazing building, as you can see, in an ethnically Macedonian-speaking village in northwestern Greece, and you can see that Christina it's made of iron. So the authorities will put a Greek flag there. It's in the north of Greece. It can be very cold, very windy. The flag would get destroyed. We would replace it. It would be destroyed again by the elements. So they decided to install an iron flag at the top of the school. So you can see there the presence of the Greek state being sort of forced and forged in the primary school. But of course, the Balkans are a great example of a truism, or a truth if you want, that all linguistics students learn very early on in their studies. This was written by Max Weinreich, a Yiddish scholar, who wrote that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. So in linguistics, we don't accept the difference between a language and a dialect is based on linguistic criteria. It's based clearly on political, social, economic, cultural considerations. So what you consider to be a standard language or a language happens to be a variety that for different historical reasons was chosen to become the standard language of a nation state. Once a variety is chosen to become the standard, it acquires its army and its navy. It becomes official. It is mentioned in law, in a constitution. It's taught in schools. It's the language of education, administration, the media. It's written down in dictionaries and grammar books. And when that happens, all other varieties that coexisted with that original variety are demoted to the status of a dialect. They're considered to be inferior to the language or variations of the language. So what makes a language? Well, you speak a language if you think you speak a language. This is an excellent example. I don't know if I can explain it, if I'm not from that area. So you see there a pack of cigarettes sold somewhere in the Western Balkans, in the former Yugoslav space. You see a text, which I imagine says smoking kills, written 3 times, twice in the same alphabet without a single difference. You could somehow make an argument to say, okay, Serbian is written using the Cyrillic alphabet and Montenegrin, Bosnian and Croatian are written using the Latin alphabet, so both have to be there. But why does the Latin alphabet have to be there twice, even when there's not much space, like in the middle packet? Yeah? The middle packet is like a longer sentence, it's not just 2 words. So why would you have that phrase there? Why would you waste ink? Why would you create this? Also because being there matters. If I ask you which one is Bosnian and which one is Croatian, can you tell? You'd say alphabetically, the first one is Bosnian, the second is Croatian, but how do you know? Why not the other way around? Because being there matters. Showing that you are there matters, no matter if you're exactly the same to an outsider like myself. And of course, migration and identity and language. Back when I showed you words that the Balkan languages borrowed from Turkish, Kurbet was the first one I included in that table. Moving abroad for work it's found in all of the languages of the Balkans. And of course, emigration from the Balkans has always been a defining feature of the lives of many people from the Balkans, including the past 15 to 20 years. These are just some of the titles of articles that talk about the depopulation of the Western Balkans, the fall in the population of the Balkan states in recent years, the negative net population index. People are leaving from the Balkans, and we don't know if they're going to go back. So of course they leave from the Balkans and they go elsewhere for different reasons. Of course we have had wars affecting the region, but of course one of the key things today are economic considerations. And Greece, where I'm from, very early on in the 2010s experienced the financial crisis, which, as you will perhaps know, led to many people from Greece, both ethnically Greek and migrant populations to leave from Greece in search of better opportunities elsewhere. So you see here some data from the 2021 census, the Office for National Statistics for England and Wales. You see there the number of people who had been born in Albania, Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania in 2011, and the equivalent number in 2021. You see that the population of all four countries increased, but most spectacularly, the Romanian population more than almost increased by 6 times in 10 years. But of course, these statistics are statistics. They mask a lot of internal variation. Yeah, when you talk about what is this almost 750,000 of people, if you look a bit better, you find a lot of variation within these statistics. Part of my research that I'm going to talk to you about in a minute has to do with Albanian onward migration from Greece in the UK. This is people who migrated from Albania to Greece and then from Greece to the UK. And indeed, the 2021 census allows us to say that of the 86,791 Greek passport holders living in England and Wales, 15.6% were born in Albania. This is a considerable proportion of what is called the Greek migration, or migration from Greece. So in collaboration with my colleague Regina Ndozzi from the University of California, Berkeley, we are looking into the sociolinguistics of this migration trajectory. We have published and are currently publishing on trajectories of vulnerability in biographical narratives of Albanian onward migrants, on the acquisition of Greek citizenship as a strategic resource that enabled a lot of, especially second-generation Albanians to leave from Greece, often driven not only by Greece's economic situation, but also by experiences of discrimination and racism that the Albanian migrants in Greece have consistently faced since the early 90s when they first arrived in Greece. More recently, Regina and I have written on renaming practices in Albanian onward migration, looking at how Albanian migrants in Greece move between naming worlds, adopting Greek names while in Greece, in an act of racial linguistic erasure to de-index their Albanianness in an attempt to fit in, to face fewer obstacles in Greece, which of course never happens. And interestingly, we're finding that when people in this group migrate to parts like the UK, there is a kind of rediscovery of Albanianness, a readoption of the Albanian name and an abandonment of the Greek name that characterized their life in Greece. We have written about this in Kosovo 2.0. You can scan this QR code and you'll find our article which sort of brings all of these areas together in an accessible, non-academic way. So it is in this body of work that I'm also looking at Greek complementary schools in the UK and the presence of non-Greek pupils and staff in Greek schools, on Saturday schools. In a recent survey that I completed, and the article is available open access if you would like to read it, 69%, almost 70% of Greek schools in the UK, including in London, teach pupils who speak Albanian at home in addition to Greek. 26.1% teach Romanian-speaking pupils, and almost 18% Bulgarian-speaking pupils. And we have collected narratives from teachers who claim that things like the little boy comes to the school wearing t-shirts that say Albanian on them and tells us, this is my dad's country, I really like learning Greek, but my dad's country is Albania. So this is present-day Balkan multilingualism. A child with Albanian parents going to a Greek school in the UK, proudly affirming both his Greek and Albanian identity. So I'm going to close with a few quotes from second-generation Albanian onward migrants from Greece and the UK, who talk to us about their identity and how it's tied to language. And a finding of our research is that the people we talk to don't associate with Albanians from Albania or with Greeks from Greece in the same way that they associate with other Albanians from Greece. They will often say that I don't really speak any single language. It's a mix of Albanian and Greek, and neither side can understand what we're saying when they hear us. So we have our own code. We mix our languages in a specific way, perhaps in a way that during the Pax Ottomana was done. Yeah, natural, without the others understanding. Or Ermal told us that even my friendships now are no longer with either Greeks or Albanians. I can't really connect with them because I can't share what I've been through with them. So personal life experiences become the defining characteristics of who you can associate with. Not whether you have an Albanian badge or a Greek badge or an Albanian passport or a Greek passport, but what you've been through. And you can only associate with other people who've gone through the same thing as you. All my friends now are Greek Albanians, as we call ourselves, Albanians who grew up in Greece. We have more or less the same mindset, the same experiences, and at this point in life, I can't say that I can be very close friends with either a Greek or an Albanian because I don't have that much in common with them. So we can't put them in boxes that we might want to put them in. They're in their own, carving their own social space. This is an excellent example of how this happens. This is a football team in North London, Apollo FC. Thank you very much. This team consists mostly of Albanian migrants from Greece, who before forming Apollo played either in the Illyrians, an Albanian football team, or different teams, including Greek Cypriot teams. Both groups reported experiencing racism. So in the Greek context, they were the Albanians. In the Albanian context, they were the Yorgos, the Albanians from Greece. So they formed their own team. They merged the national colors of the two countries, red and blue. And this is a Facebook post that they, an Instagram post, a very recent one, where they celebrate their successes. And it's a video, and in 2 consecutive stills, we see one that says, "We'll make it happen because we believe it." "We'll make it happen" has a Greek flag in it, because we believe it has the Albanian flag. So the Greek flag, I don't know if it's on purpose, but I would like to think it is, because it was the Greek flag, the Greek citizenship that enabled them to be where they are. But the dream came from the Albanian heritage. So to conclude, I hope to have shown that it's not easy to deal with the Balkans from a linguistic, political, ideological, social group. In Greece, there's a phrase that's very famous, "Εδώ είναι Βαλκάνια, δεν είναι επεξεγέλασε." This is the Balkans. It's not fun and games. So when you deal with anything Balkan related, you need to know you can't treat it lightly. You have to take it seriously, and it's not easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Petros. Please save your questions for later. And now I'd like to invite 3 speakers. They'll deliver so-called lightning talks, 10 minutes each. First, I won't read their impressive biographies, so please go online and check out. But I'll just say that Albert Cherkagashi is a writer and community organizer. Jelena Sofronievich, producer and writer, and Nick Nasser, translator and editor. So please welcome Albert to speak to us.
Thank you. How's everyone doing? Good? Thank you so much for coming out. The weather is not so great, but it's giving London. So yeah, my name is Arvid Chikagoshe. And a brief background about myself. I was born and raised in East London. My parents came over to the UK during the disintegration of the former Yugoslavia. And like Petros, I come from a very diverse kind of linguistic space. My mother was born in Pristina to a Turkish-speaking family. A specific dialect in Pristina, they spoke Turkish. Historically, they also often merged their languages, so there were individuals that spoke Serbian around them, spoke Romani and also Albanian. On my dad's side, they only really spoke Albanian, but when they moved into Pristina around the 1950s, they obviously acquired new languages. What's very interesting about Kosovo, as is the case with pretty much the entire Balkan region, like Petro's illustrated, it's a very linguistically diverse space. So many different cultures, religions, and identities, and also linguistic practices have really kind of colored the region. Sadly, historically, language has often been a point of deep contention, but also oppression. Linguistic diversities have often been stifled by different nation-state systems to kind of continue very ethno-nationalist ideologies when it comes to state building. Within Kosovo, however, what I find really interesting about Kosovo, I know that I'm biased, Kosovo as a space has been very religiously and ethnically, but also linguistically diverse in the sense that every single dominant language found in the Balkan region can also be found in Kosovo itself. So you have Albanian, you have Serbian, you have Turkish Romani, Ladino, which was a Judeo-Spanish language, you have Aromanian, you have Croatian, you have Circassian, which is a Northwest Caucasian language, communities that came over during an experience of genocide that they faced in Imperial Russia. And you also have specific dialects like Nashinsky, which is often spoken by the Gorani Torbeshi communities in parts of southern Kosovo itself. You also have the dialect that we'll be speaking about today. This image specifically is from the Albert Korn collection, which is based in Paris, and it depicts two Turkish and two Jewish girls in the region that my mother originally comes from, called Topana in Pristina. I like to often kind of fabulate ideas and kind of references that potentially this could be a family member, kind of just navigating Pristina as a space through history. So like I said, sadly, Kosovo has also experienced these systems of nationalization, kind of actively taking languages and forcing it onto communities, kind of really dwindling and obscuring the realities of the fact that a lot of communities have historically spoken each other's languages, just naturally, just given the fact that they've existed in close proximity to each other. And it was actually through Instagram and my work with Balkanism, which is a digital platform that I founded 6 years ago, that an individual reached out to me and they said, have you ever heard of this dialect spoken in Vlahovac? Vlahovac is a region in southeastern Kosovo called Ravečki. And she said we spoke this language due to multiple reasons, and it was significantly and primarily a Slavic-based language, but it often took influences from Turkish and Albanian as well. So yes, this Pidgin dialect kind of combined Serbian, Albanian, and Bulgarian into a singular linguistic form, which was very interesting for me because often Kosovo is very stereotypically represented through narratives of division, communities that can't get along. But here we have an alphabet where communities were able to kind of combine themselves and also combine the languages that they spoke into a singular form, which is very interesting. So yes, Rahovac is in southeastern Kosovo. It's also known as Kosovo's wine country. So if ever you're in Kosovo at that time, super beautiful landscape, but also it's very rich and very well known in terms of the production of wine. So what exactly is a Pidgin dialect? So it's very interesting. So a Pidgin is a simplified makeshift language that develops spontaneously to allow basic communication between groups of people who do not share a common tongue. It's often very prominent within a lot of kind of colonial and imperial contexts where different migrant communities are brought into certain spaces for the purposes of trade. So it's a form of lingua franca between communities who don't speak each other's native language, which I think is very interesting. So it typically features a stripped down grammar and a limited functional vocabulary borrowed from the languages of the people interacting. So you'll see kind of a merging of these two different languages to basically form a type of communication. So in terms of, so grapes, here we have Rahovac grapes. So yeah, in terms of the origin or the kind of like the genesis of this dialect within this part of Kosovo, it's said that Albanians would grow these grapes, so they were very much in the agriculture of growing these grapes. But due to religious restrictions, they wouldn't produce the wine to drink it, but they would often sell it to local Serb communities who actually made the wine itself. So it's said that this language was basically produced as a way to form interaction between Albanian and Serb communities, but through time it became a more dominant language in the way that it was kind of an association with the region or the town of Rahovac itself. One Kosovar academic regarded it as a mixed speech containing elements of several Balkan languages, Albanian, Serbian, Bulgarian, as well as Eastern languages such as Arabic, Turkish, and Persian. Nejat Payazite, in his description of the Albanian dialect of Podrima, refers to the Slavic idiom of Brahovac as a mixed language, Njeju e Persir, which is basically just a mixed language. What's really interesting in my research is a pidgin language is often spoken externally. It's not something that you speak within the home. And pidgin dialects often transform into creolized dialects or into creoles when they enter the family home, and they are often spoken by native communities. So it's spoken as the kind of first language that they know. And what's very interesting about Bravici is that it was a pidgin language socially, but there were many moments in many families where this dialect was adopted inside the home and it became the dominant form of language that they spoke as a representation of their cultural identities and their localized association with Rahovac as an area. Nowadays, post-Kosovo War, a lot of the Kosovo Serb communities from Rahovac were displaced, so that significantly impacted the area itself. But what's also very interesting is how the older community continued to cultivate this dialect. As we know, within a lot of Balkan contexts, a trend of linguistic purism has often dominated the region. So any type of association with Turkish or Serbian within the Kosovan space is completely unacceptable and is frowned upon. So there's been this real kind of effort to remove any type of linguistic diversity in that sense. What was very interesting is if you go to Rahovac, you'll often hear the older community say certain references that kind of evoke the history of this dialect. So for example, it's very common in Rahovac to hear people say "Sa oshku khljeb." Khljeb as a word means bread in Serbian. In most kind of like dialects in Kosovo, you say "Sa bulka," for example, bulka being bread in the Albanian language. So it's very interesting the way that communities and references to this dialect live on in kind of like muted form, or kind of like older generations continue that. But I think it's also very interesting to use this dialect to reflect on the very negative impact of ethno-nationalist ideologies and then the way that they actively seek to dwindle any type of linguistic diversity that extends outside of the ethno-nationalist dynamic. So I have I'm going to turn off the volume again. So the girl on Instagram, like I said, that reached out to me, she basically sent me a voice note speaking the dialect itself. So she's a young woman living in the Netherlands, and where is it? Should be. Oh, here we go.
Moje ime je Satidje, ja sam 32 godine, ja živim u Utrecht, u Holandiju. Evo 25 godina mi smo došli u Holandiju, ja, moj otac, mati, sestre i braće i moj ađa. I doma govorimo najviše arabički i pomanje šiptarski.
Yeah. So that was the dialect, basically. She just sent it to me. But she also spoke about the way that it's spoken within her family home, but still today, whenever they go back to Kosovo, they often face a lot of pressure to basically stop using that dialect. And so, yeah, I am done with everything. But yeah, thank you so much for your attention. And Balkanism does a lot of different happenings in London and also in the region. We actively try to promote more kind of inter-ethnic solidarity in the region. And yeah, thank you so much for your engagement.
Thank you. Jelena is next. Our speaker.
Thank you for the invitation to be part of today. I'm going to shift the conversation towards the field of visual languages to talk about a wonderful artist and translator called Joel Kuyundic, who is primarily known for a lot of illustrations he made for others' book covers. But he did also write a book of his own called Torn Canvas, which is in the collection of the British Library. And it's with that we'll begin. The Golden Eagle, Nanny Catherine Wells' 1960 anthology of poetry to Scottish nationalism, is more closely associated with the colour red than the colour gold. Not in its socialist persuasion, but because of the distinctive woodcut print of Arthur's Seat and Salisbury Crags on its cover, which was designed by the artist Joe Coyundich. Its colour palette of orange-red cut with electric blue was typical of Coyundich, who between 1948 and 1958 found place and community in the city of Edinburgh below. Coyundich was a multidisciplinary artist and fifth-generation craftsman of Turkish descent. He was born in Subotica, then part of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, soon to be renamed Yugoslavia, and now present-day Serbia. The artist's autobiography, Torn Canvas, published by Richard Patterson Limited in 1957, traces his many migrations in pursuit of education in Dalmatia, present-day Croatia, then Venice between 1939 and 1940, and onto the Royal College of Art in Budapest between 1941 and 1944. Coyundich's proclaimed Yugoslav identity and language persisted throughout his life, along with his Turkish family name and cultural heritage. A man referred to in his biography as Uncle Yeno, a goldsmith or Koyunjia, practiced the family trade, which first began, in his words, in the service of the sultans. This legacy endures through generations, and in my curatorial work, I've connected with Coyundich's eldest child, Kate Emerald, or Kathleen Coyundich, who continues to work in metal and particularly silver today from her home in Canada. The distinctive orange-red shade of Coyundich's woodcut on Wells's anthology can be traced through the artist's prints and works on paper more widely. Paprika was particularly popular in the Ottoman Empire, which, for much of the 16th and 17th centuries, spanned the countries of Central Europe. The red peppers from which it was made were first referenced in print in Hungary in 1604 by the name torok bors, or Turkish pepper, and were quickly cultivated in the Balkans and Southwest Asia and North Africa, once transported to Europe from South America by Spanish and Portuguese colonialists. We also see this distinctive paprika shade in the textiles of centre-born Bernard Klein. However, despite the connections between the artists, both of whom were born in the region of Vojvodina, where both Serbian and Hungarian remain official languages, and were active in Edinburgh after the Second World War, there is nothing to suggest they ever crossed paths in Scotland. Klein, in pursuit of assimilation, distanced himself from the region and its diasporas, whereas Coyundich actively supported displaced artists from Yugoslavia and Hungary through exhibitions, commissions, and cultural connections from Glasgow to London and back and forth. Food, however, often arises in the memories and memorials of both artists. In Shelley Klein's The See-Through House, My Father in Full Colour from 2020, a biographical account of Klein's life, the author emphasises Klein's relationship with food. Paprikash, a potent dish enjoyed across Central Europe, is still prepared today by members of the Lorimer family, who lived with the Coyundiches in Edinburgh in the early 1950s. Robert Lorimer was a distinguished publisher, and he shared a passion for literature not only with Coyundich, but with a successive lodger of the family, Ian Hamilton Finlay, whose first texts were exclusively illustrated by Coyundich. The same intense blues and reds and clean dove greys, as described by the artist in Torn Canvas about his first toy boat in Dalmatia, recur in these works on paper, such as The Seabed and Other Stories. Before establishing more permanent lodgings in Sheen's Gardens, the Coyundich family had lived on a sailboat in the harbour of Musselburgh in Edinburgh. Coyundich's partner and frequent collaborator, Anne Coyundich, sewed their eldest child a colourful sleeping bag, and she nestled in a cubbyhole under the bow. The relationship between Robert Lorimer and Hamilton Finlay later broke down, and Coyundich left Scotland for British Columbia. Here, Coyundich and Anne helped establish the Nelson School of Fine Arts, now known as the Kootenay School of Art. This radical education program was a departure from his previous pedagogical experience as a visiting lecturer for the Arts Council of Great Britain at the Edinburgh College of Art. During this time in British Columbia, Coyundich developed complex public sculptures, often featuring the thunderbird, a mythological bird-like spirit widespread in Indigenous and First Nation cultures, which is deeply rooted in his own migrations and movements across borders and seas. The last two images that I've shown you are from an exhibition that I curated in Scotland last year called Seedlings, Diasporic Imaginaries, with a wonderful organisation called Travelling Gallery, which is a purpose-built bus that goes all across Scotland. And you can see on the left-hand side on the corkboard, not only torn canvas again, but some of the developed ceramic works that I was just referring to there. But moving away from Scotland, Kujundžić really maintained his connection with the country from afar, and its influence endured in his practice. Letters to the Kujundžić family in British Columbia in the 1970s were also recently displayed in this exhibition, Seedlings. They illustrate how the artist remained active and engaged with Scotland's cultural communities through print and the written word. From the scroll, we can explicate the outcomes of unrealised projects, especially with Hamilton Finlay, if not assume conversations about seafaring, classical mythology, and contemporary practices. Kujundžić's time on the Western Isles of Scotland reveals itself to be particularly important. He is widely considered to have developed one of the world's first experimental solar kilns, experimenting with solar heat following close study of sun-baked bricks produced by Anasazi Indians near Montezuma's Castle in Arizona between the 7th and 13th centuries. This interest in ceramics as a medium can certainly be traced in Edinburgh, and his relationship to artists including Bernard Leach and Joan Faithfull, who established their pottery on the Isle of Mull. The shores of Mull appear again in an experimental film recently salvaged from the depths of the family archives, Quest Under Sea, from the early 1950s. This 8-minute film follows the artist and his family across land, along beaches, and into the waters of the western coast. There is no clear narrative, blurring the boundaries between experimental film, documentary, and holiday footage, as well as concrete poetry, with the artist's hand-drawn intertitles or interventions. It reveals Kujundžić's deep relation to water and natural environments, as prominent in the passages of torn canvas, recounting his natural ability for swimming and fishing, and wonder and affinity for the Dalmatian coast. Likewise, archive editions of The Scotsman, to which Kujundžić was a regular contributor, provide further details about the artist's wider ecologically and environmentally engaged practice, such as his efforts to cultivate seaweed. Kujundžić's paintings, currently held in private collections in family homes across the UK, reinforce an apparent interest in geology, evident in the scenes of showing the extraction of granite from Tormore and stone quarrying depicted at the opening of the film. Negated by the black and white footage of Quest Under Sea are the deep red colours of the rocks, present also in Faithfull's pots composed of local clay, and her comprehensive text, The Ross of Mull Granite Quarries, from 1995, which relates the ecological and economic decline of the island. Quest Under Sea also prompts consideration of what more conventional verbal and written histories miss from an individual's lived experience. Can we ever enter Kujundžić's currents and circles by remaining so firmly on land? Was there something of the western shores of both Scotland and Canada and their relative safety that enabled his warm recollections of the western shores of Yugoslavia, if not also the dirtied industrial rivers of the Danube and the Tisza? Kujundžić need not be excavated as such. In Canada, he is well known, exhibited, and remembered. Yet his foundational role in Edinburgh's growing artistic community on the precipice of the festivals and formative early work with artists and writers has been overlooked in more conventional histories of Scottish and British art. His contributions remain hidden in plain sight, publicly visible only to the faithful of St Mayhew's in Cardross and Edinburgh Jesuit Church, and in libraries, to those who read between the bylines of the poets Hugh MacDermott and Joseph Chiari, as well as Hamilton Finlay and Wells. Beneath the Salisbury Crags, John Knox's house, the oldest original medieval building surviving on the Royal Mile, carries one reminder of the artist's many identities. 6 medals of Scottish kings and queens, commissioned and cast in metal in the 1990s, speak not only of the artist's many heritages, Scottish history crafted from the metalwork of his family trade, but also Kujundžić's early exhibitions in the adjoining building, once known as the Netherbow Arts Centre and at present the Scottish Storytelling Centre. Photographs from these early exhibitions and reproduced posters of later exhibitions, including ancestral images, are also rare documents of the exhibition space in the basement, which otherwise has not been preserved. Deeper knowledge and understanding of individuals can often reveal more about the cultural ecologies and infrastructures within which they worked. Vice versa, acquiescing the fall of one artist into posthumous obscurity risks the loss of cultural histories more widely. The palimpsestic nature of this single building on the Mile, much like the many institutions and nation-states of Kuyundic's life, is a poetic reminder of this artist and writer's complex practice. His patriotic public commission is a prompt to reconsider his own works in print, ones which deserve to be removed from the shelves. Thank you very much. Also, you can have a look through this in the break. So just
Thank you very much, Jelena. And now our final speaker on this panel, Nick.
Bravo. Thank you for all the previous speakers, actually. There will be a bit of overlap here. And I've just decided that I'm just going to use myself as an example of Balkan multilingualism, and especially how it's in a very hyper form when it's in the diaspora. So if we move on, just who I am. I'm born in Australia, if you can tell by the accent. My parents are ethnic Macedonian. My father was born in Macedonia. My mother was born in Australia, but both her parents are considered ethnic Macedonians. I'm a chartered linguist and certified in translation from Bulgarian to English, Croatian to English, Macedonian to English, and Serbian to English. I also adapt text to Australian English because it's my cousin. And I also do authenticity and sensitivity reading for Balkan-related books and articles. Now, that looks like an impressive list of languages, but did I actually, why? Why do I have all these languages? I was forced into it. That was it. I was forced. And so I'll just go through the languages I was exposed to by the age of 5. And this is happening in the suburbia of Australia. So first of all, I'll just show a map, and I wonder if I can point out here. So just this area over here, that's where my grandmother comes from. And over here, just that's where my father's from. And if we go down just over here, my grandfather was born there, but he had to flee when he was 11 years old to this area over here. Now, I have deliberately put a map here of no borders because I wanted to emphasize the fact that the topography really formed what forms the dialects that they speak. Now, my father, my grandmother, and my grandmother and grandfather, they all spoke Makedonski, Macedonian. However, they spoke 3 rather different dialects. And that does play a major role eventually. So let's see. So if we start with my father, what languages did I get to hear from him first of all? So he was born in a village called Urizari, which is near the city of Cuisine. At the time it was Yugoslavia, now it's in North Macedonia. So his standard language, the language that he would speak, especially when I was young, was the Cuisine dialect of Macedonian. There were quite a few people in our community who were also from the same village, so that we would meet up with them, hearing them speak in that particular dialect of Macedonian. As well, I spent as much time in my childhood up to age 5 in that village as I did in Australia. So my first language that I spoke was this actual dialect. However, when it came to the official language, so in the form of the books that we would receive that was coming from Yugoslav Macedonia, the films, the music, the songs, the newspaper, it would all be in that standard Macedonian, which was quite different in many cases from the Cuisine dialect. I call it the compromise. As I said, I've got these 3 different dialects that I'm having to deal with in particular. I didn't know which dialect to pick when speaking with my father, with my grandmother, and my grandfather. And so in the end, I just compromised as what a standard language is and started speaking Macedonian, which always ended up being quite, caused a bit of arguments, I have to say, when no one could agree on the same word. Coming from that as well, since he was from Yugoslavia, Serbo-Croatian was always around us as well. That came in the form, again, from books, newspapers, entertainment in particular, in the form of music and films, And it would also come from the people that would be hanging around. We'd also be involved in pan-Yugoslav events where the common language, the language of inter-ethnic communication, as you will, would be in Serbo-Croatian. And there'd always be a newspaper lying around, and that was Nova Doba, which was the Yugoslav newspaper in Australia, which would be mainly in Serbo-Croatian. There were 3 pages in Macedonian, which of course my father had to read. And I've got Slovenian in brackets because there was 1 page there in Slovenian that was the only exposure I had to Slovenians, and curious me had to read through it.
How poor you.
The other thing was the Courtenay dialect of Aromanian. Now, my father now and then would meet some certain people and he'd be speaking this strange language, but he would never tell me what it was. And then I remember one time when I was 13 and I asked him, do you know Romanian? And he'd just speak in this dialect, which was actually the local dialect of Aromanian. And apparently we had ancestors who spoke this language as their first language. And he was the last person in the family who could speak it. So that's just my father. Now my grandfather, who was born in Karaköy, which is now Katafuto in Greece, near the border of Bulgaria. His family sought refuge just over the border in Nevrokop, which is now the city of Kocedelchik in Bulgaria, age 11. Now his standard, the language that he grew up speaking was the Drama Nevrokop dialect of Nikol Makedonski. However, if we're going to be basing it on standardized languages, it was much closer to Bulgarian than it was to standard Macedonian. However, when he went to school, which was only 2 years, since it was within Greece, he was taught in standard Demotic Greek, and he was a fluent Greek speaker, to the point that when he met my grandmother, who I'll go through soon, they couldn't understand each other's dialects of Macedonian. So for the first 10 years of their relationship, they spoke to each other in Greek. But he also knew standard Bulgarian, and we also got standard Bulgarian. The exposure to it came through books that were being sent by the Slavyansky Komitet from Bulgaria, letters coming from relatives from Bulgaria that I was the one that was forced to read. My grandfather would be reading a newspaper that was coming from America, which was a Macedonian organization that still wrote in pre-1945 Bulgarian. So that would be just lying around. And then later on in communication with relatives that are in Bulgaria, it was in the standard Bulgarian. He was also a fluent speaker of the local dialect of Turkish because after his mother died at a very young age, he was raised by his neighbor who was a Turkish speaker. And I've got Italian there because he spent 6 months also living in Naples before he made it to Australia and picked up Italian. And it was very useful living in Australia, knowing Italian, especially in the migrant surroundings that he was in. Now my grandmother. So she was born in the village of what was then Proshoshtitsa, but renamed Amochori in Greece, in the Florida region in northwest Greece. Her native dialect is the Florida Valley dialect of Macedonia, as I found is very different from the dialect that's spoken on the other side of Florida. This was the dialect that I got to hear most in Australia, since we did not really have, my father did not have any relatives, my grandfather did not have any relatives in Australia, but we did have relatives from my mother's side. They were her parents, actually. Her father immigrated to Australia in 1929. So had experience a family in Australia for almost 100 years. Of course, she was also a fluent speaker of standard Demotic Greek. That was her education was in Greek. She would write in Greek. Actually, she could only write in Greek. She would be communicating with, of course, the large people, with our large Greek-speaking community in Australia. She did not want me to know Greek. That was one thing. She had a very strong political agenda there that I was never to know Greek. But there was so much Greek around me that by the time I was 18, I did start learning it. She understood Pontian Greek, which was rather surprising. The village that she was in was a mixed village. When communicating with Pontian Greeks, they would normally speak in standard Greek, but she did understand it. And she also was conversational in the local dialects of Tosk Albanian and Aromanian, and she picked this up because you get a better price from the trader at the market if you speak the language. However, we had two other dialects that were really the ones that were in place. We had a Fulham Gardens, Virginia, Macedonian Bulgarian dialect, combining primarily Florida Valley dialect of Macedonian and the Plovdiv dialect of Bulgarian and later Australian English. This is what the language that my grandparents were speaking towards the end of their life. And if I speak to my father now, as well as many other people of the Macedonian-speaking communities in Australia, they speak the Australian Macedonian dialect, which is code switching. First of all, it was between the Florida Valley dialect of Macedonian and Australian English, and I mean Australian English. But now it's a mix of Macedonian dialects, particularly from the Bitola region, but more so standardised Macedonian with Australian English. But I got to experience this. This is where the difference in exposure occurred. As the elders, and with very few Australian English speakers around me, I was exposed to all these languages and in many cases forced to interact on their terms. However, my brother, 10 years younger, is monolingual Australian English. And as all these people who couldn't speak or even understand English, when I was a child, by the time he started speaking, they understood English at least. And so he dictated the terms and how to interact with them. But I'll just finish off with the last thing. Does Balkan multilingualism still exist in the diaspora, or have the host country languages prevailed? Well, this just popped up on my Instagram feed just the other day. It's a young rap star by the name of Marcos in the Netherlands. Now, try and, if I can play this. How many languages do you hear him?
Lele, Marcos pravi pa kalama, mama boy is in the trap. Like that the cigarettes come out all Nu wil ik pull-up in een onderblijven, zeg maar er gaat geen ludo. Ze geloven niet dat we gaan vliegen naar de UFO. Chillen dat je zoobie man, neem je niet goed man. Stek we de na ulica, ik geef ons aan ons transie. Pravi Colombiano, ik ben net aan het party. Soms veel bende, se ga zaka jugo. Maar ik te zalaga, tuka samo vaši utros. Geen schoen, zeg ik tegen je koekie. Paranoia, signaals. Geef geen fuck om die materiaal. Club in die Yuba in de chow.
I counted at least 5. Oops, let's move on. Anyway, that's what I had to say. If you want to contact with me, I'm also available in these places. And I'd like to thank you for listening to my...
So, hello everyone again. Yeah. So, in the second part of our event, we'll talk about the languages that we offer at UCL, as well as about the CEAS library and the collection that we have here. You already heard who I am, but I'll also be joined by Anna who's teaching Macedonian and Slovene, 2 languages, in our evening class program, and Mirela Jaferan, who's teaching Albanian, but she's also teaching Greek in other places, only because we don't offer Greek, otherwise she would. So I'd like to tell you what we offer at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies. So we offer BAs in 9 languages: Bulgarian, Czech, Finnish, Hungarian, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Serbian, Croatian, and Ukrainian. We offer an MA in 11 languages, meaning the first 9 plus Slovene and Estonian. But we offer 18 languages in short courses online. So all the previous ones in blue, green, plus Albanian, Belarusian, Georgian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Macedonian, and Slovak. So this is the richest offer in the UK by far, but even probably in the world, we are like very strong in offering so many languages. We offer them at 5 levels, beginner to advanced plus. The delivery is online. That is because during the pandemic we moved online like everyone else, and they couldn't come offline because we started to have customers from all over the UK and abroad. From abroad, we have customers from the United States and all sorts of countries. Anna and Mirela will tell you more about that. Classes are delivered between 6:30 and 8:30. So say if you do beginner Romanian, you have 1 class per week. So the average total. You're all okay. So the average number of students per year is over 500, and we have over 30 tutors for the 18 languages, because for some we have 2-3 tutors, as they are very, very popular.
You forgot the adjective there. Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, we always kind of innovate. So we started with a unique course. I don't think it's offered anywhere else in the world. Albanian for heritage speakers, that is adult speakers, because we only accept people, above 18. So that started in 2025. Mirela will tell you more about it as she's teaching it. And we're going to follow with 2 more languages, Romanian for heritage speakers and Bulgarian for heritage speakers from October 2026. That is because of the growing of the communities and the demand. We also offer tailored courses sometimes, like if there is demand, again, even if they're outside the 5 levels, the 5 classical levels that we offer, very advanced courses where, people kind of finish 5 levels and I still want to continue, so we introduce a kind of advanced plus or plus or whatever suits us. So we're very flexible in that sense. And then we'll also add more languages as we feel that, there's a demand, such as, for instance, we're looking at adding Kazakh. Also considering offering accelerated courses during the day for short periods, like 1 month or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on what people need. And probably we'll start offering summer schools for language tasters in the hope that people try out languages and then join from October. We do collaborate with embassies and cultural centers in all our languages. We pay mutual visits and do joint activities quite often, like probably once or twice a year at least. And we also were awarded a special commendation for our short courses program in 2020 by the Chartered Institute of Linguists for our diverse and kind of supportive program for languages. Just a couple of quotes from students' feedbacks, very briefly. Feedback is usually 97% positive with the odd kind of little thing, of course.
But we don't like it.
Yeah, like less grammar, more grammar. And that's it from me. We do have a QR code. Did you manage to put that QR? So at the back. So at the end of the presentation, you could scan the QR code both about ProLang and about the short courses. Or shall I do it now? Shall I go to that slide? Yeah, I'll go to that slide now. Why not? Sorry, because I'm giving away. Yeah. So the blue one, sorry, the black one is for the short courses, and the blue one is for ProLang. If you want to, or pretend you do. Okay, so Mirela. Anna, sorry, Anna.
Oh.
Anna, I have to go back to this way. Oh dear, not very good. Yep.
Hello everyone. Like my brother from another mother, I also hate borders, so I was given this map and then I put pictures of my students and through different events and picnics and just to see how we have fun at our courses. So my name is Anna Ilios-Kazabashnik and I teach Macedonian and Slovene at the UCLCs. If I had to describe what I do in 1 sentence, I will say I help people fall in love with languages they didn't even know they needed in their lives. For me, teaching these 2 languages is not just a profession, it's a personal story. I come from a multilingual and multicultural background where language has always been more than communication. It has been identity, memory, humor, and connection. My 3 besties, this microphone too. My 3 besties were from Albanian, Turkish, and Roma origin. So I feel privileged to sit on the floor to hear Albanian, Turkish, and Roma and think how some things are familiar and how some sounds distant. All of that filled with Turkish coffee, of course, in hiding because our grannies told us that if we drank it, we will grow a foxtail. Now in reflection, I think of it as a very interesting piece of cultural imagination and sad that it didn't happen. That kind of environment made me realize early on that language is never just about words. It's about belonging, perception, and imagination. I didn't arrive at teaching languages by accident. My path into it was shaped by curiosity about people, identity, and how language quietly shapes the way we see the world. I was always fascinated by how a single phrase can carry humor in one culture, politeness in another, and emotion that doesn't translate neatly anywhere else. Macedonian and Slovene, although small in number of speakers on a global scale, carry incredibly rich cultural worlds. Every lesson I teach is in a way an invitation to step into those. Professionally, I see teaching them as both an academic and cultural responsibility. On a personal level, I find teaching deeply human. Every classroom is different because every group of students brings their own stories, languages, and perspectives. That makes the process constantly alive. I don't see myself as the only expert in the room. I see it as a shared space where learning moves in both directions. When we first meet students, there is usually a familiar moment. Language often feels unfamiliar at first glance, new alphabet, unexpected grammar structures, sounds they seem challenging, but very quickly something changes. Students stop seeing difficulty and start seeing patterns, logic, and personality inside the language. And that shift from hesitation to curiosity is one of the most rewarding parts of my job. Working at UCLC is especially meaningful because it brings together students from all over the world. That diversity transforms a classroom into something much bigger than language instruction. It becomes a meeting point of cultures, identities, and ideas. And that is where language teaching becomes something more than professional work for me. It becomes a form of connection building. And I think that is what keeps me inspired every single day. For me, CIS is not just a workplace. It's a place where smaller languages are given a meaningful academic space and where teaching becomes part of a much bigger conversation about culture, identity, and Balkan in Europe. I'm also very aware that I'm here because of people who believe in these languages, and in me, especially Ramona here, who found me, supports me, and is the reason I'm standing here today, and who will probably also be the one to keep me out of it one day. Through platforms like ProLand, these smaller languages, sorry?
She will be able now, because you said it publicly.
Oh, she will find her way, she's from Romania. Through platforms like ProLand, these smaller languages are actively heard and shared. At the heart of everything I do is a simple belief. Languages are not just about communication. We heard that a lot today. They are about understanding people more deeply. When a student learns even a little Macedonian or Slovene, they are not just gaining a skill. They are gaining access to another way of seeing the world. And for me, that is what makes the world endlessly meaningful. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rila Jafari and I teach Albanian at CIS. So, following such interesting multilingual and multicultural stories and backgrounds, mine might not sound quite as exciting or multi, but it certainly revolves around Balkans and occasionally stretches a little further. So when I'm thinking how it would be best to describe the different threads that have shaped who I am, I realized that perhaps three simple questions, each one in one of the languages that are part of my life, would tell the story best. So the first one is what in Greek, the language of my grandparents, and in the picture are my paternal grandparents. And on the right, village near Saranda, which is part of the Greek minority in Albania, where I've always spoken Greek. So Greek is the language that I automatically switch to whenever I speak to my parents, wherever I am and under whatever circumstances. Yet, just as automatically, I switched to Albanian when speaking to my siblings. So, which leads me to the second question, who, in Albanian. Albanian is the language of my schooling and education, and later one of the languages that I studied alongside Greek. Is the language of everyday life, friendships, and the society that surrounded me while growing up. And then comes the third question, when? And the second one is my city where I grew up, Saranda, and the Faculty of Foreign Languages in Verona, where I taught for around 16 years. So when I moved to the United States briefly and later to Britain, English became one of my working languages, and it is also now the language in which my children correct me or tease me about my accent or pronunciation, and also the language of new friendships and collaborations. So 3 languages are more than 2, so I suppose I can confidently call myself multilingual as well and join the multilingual community at SEAS, as what makes languages we teach so special at SEAS is not only the languages themselves, but also the people, the experiences, and the communities that we grow around them. So our students bring a remarkable variety of language repertoires, as Ramona said earlier, and they join us for many countries, different countries and backgrounds, as you can see some of them on the screen. Ramona mentioned earlier, on 2025, we launched a new course, Albanian for Heritage Speakers, which I'm not sure if it's the only one in the world, but for sure it's the only one in the UK. I suspect there will be other courses as well. So we have the levels that we describe usually for our students, but we see that there were people asking, young people, young professionals asking for language courses, and we couldn't put them in any of the levels because they have different concerns. They would want to learn different things. The necessity was different, so we decided to launch this course, and now in the 16th of June we will hold our first event in collaboration with the embassies of Albania and Kosovo, an event that explores the presence of Albania and Kosovo in London museums. So everyone is, of course, very welcome to join us. So going to the teaching part of the languages. So we spoke about teaching languages, and we all know, and in every course that taught the languages, but what else do we do in our courses? And I'm speaking about the Albanian courses, but surely I'm sure in the other courses as well. So we don't just learn the language, we experience culture through language by organizing and participating in cultural events. This is one of the events we have organized with the Albanian Advanced Group, Albanian evening of Albanian poetry, and also Albania through British Eyes and other activities. Have conversations with guests, not just role plays, but real conversations, like with the Albanian ambassador, the author of our textbook, publishers from Albania and many others. We share Albanian heritage through family traditions, personal stories, and even old family letters, like the one that you see on the screen, which is from 1932. One of our students brought it to us. And also, we socialize, meet up, enjoy birek, kulačka, and raki together. But what else do we do beyond teaching the language, as Anna said earlier. So we welcome new arrivals into the group. So over the years, quite a few new babies have also joined our lessons from the background, and occasionally we hear them making their contributions. The baby in the picture is not one of them, but they all are just as cute, if not even cuter. Help with translation of wedding vows into Albanian. So I'm used in translating novels from Greek into Albanian, but during the 10 years that I've been teaching at CIS, I've also become the unofficial translator for many wedding vows. Always, and try to answer random questions, sometimes on language, sometimes on Albanian life, and sometimes just why. And lastly, again, meetup together, because when teaching languages, some things are easier to explain than others, but fortunately, it seems like Dracula can help with all of them. So yes, and again, the three of us, we couldn't resist but say thank you in all the different languages that we now speak or teach. So thank you. Okay, hi everyone. Last but not least, I hope. I'm Susanna Tomanovic. I'm area liaison librarian for Southeast Europe at UCLC's library. And as well as bringing you a little display of our treasures, some of which are from the Rare Books collections, some are from our open shelf collections. I was asked to also give you a little flavor of what we've got in our UCLC's library, but also about some of the challenges of, managing Southeast Europe collection or rather Balkan collection. Okay. Missing everything. Right. There seems to be missing slide, but never mind. So in this missing slide, there was a bit of a history of UCLC's, but also history of me. Seeing that it's missing now, I'm not going to bother you greatly with that. But basically, what I was going to say, if the slide didn't disappear, I'm not sure where it went. But maybe it wasn't meant to be. So the idea of CIS, it's a long-standing library, it's a long-standing institution, and going back to 1915, amazing history, moving from the very small starts, very small beginnings at the King's College, across joining from the University of London and then joining UCL. And in 2005, rather we moved to our current location in Taviton Street, not from Houston and from here. Now, about history of me, I am originally from Bosnia, was born in 1971 in Banja Luka, what was Bosnia and Herzegovina, then part of the former Yugoslavia. As
a primary school child, I learned to speak Bosnian, obviously Serbo-Croatian it was called then, and learned both Cyrillic and Roman script, and can use both to these days. And these are some of the things that I didn't really think I was going to greatly need once I moved to the UK. However, as the as the fate sort of will have it, I kind of fell into librarianship. So in 2000, while I was still studying, doing my MA in fine art of all things, I started working at a CIS library as an evening assistant, just shelving books to start with. And 25 years later, or rather 26 years later, I am still here, or rather there, and progressing through various positions in a library, and to the basic position that I am in now, which is area specialist, as we were called a little while ago, and now area liaison librarian, whatever that means. It basically means that I am in charge of Southeast European collection or Balkan collection, covering many different countries that are all part of Balkans, and sadly not speaking all the languages as much as I would wish to do it. There's no time, or actually I'm not that talented in languages. So as you could see here on the screen, library is our library, our UCLC's library, is a part of a larger conglomerate of the UCL libraries, and we span across 17 library sites, have over 2 million books, print volumes counting, over 1,200 databases, etc., etc. CIS library, amongst all of these other libraries, houses over 500,000 books, pamphlets, periodicals, and we also have our own CIS library special collections, selection of which you are seeing here. These are some of our rare books collections here. And we also have a very rich archive with over 200 different archives. And we are also part of a UCL flagship collection. Now, oops. Okay, so UCL CIS library, UCL CIS is a largest academic collection on Russia, Central, East and Southeast Europe, providing unique resources for students, researchers and scholars. These are the countries that we cover, and we have books in vernacular languages of all of these countries, and of course English and other West European languages. We maintain research level collections of international importance. Within CIS, our area, the whole area is divided into 4 distinctive areas, and one of my colleagues is here tonight helping with the setup and being a photographer as well. And we also have other 2 colleagues who are covering other areas of Slavonic East European studies. Now, the flagship collection, as I mentioned earlier, basically means that we've got a rather special sort of status within UCL collections, which means that it's recognized that we have a particularly important collection housing in CIS, and also that it's a collection of international importance. So the investment is in us to develop these collections and to preserve them for the future as well, for the future researchers and for the future students as well. Now, Within the library, as I mentioned kind of briefly already, we've got many different parts of our collection. Books, periodicals, rare books, archives, very well-developed audiovisual collection, which is named after Professor Graffi, and also one of our former colleagues who unfortunately left us too young. As well as that, we develop and maintain guides to resources on all the countries that we cover. And I just wanted to sort of bring you another flavor, because obviously we can't bring everything here, and we were strictly told that archives are not meant to leave our premises. So there is a bit of flavor here for our archival collections, and some of them are actually online, so you will be able to access them, as well as historical maps that were, we also have some travel books that were covered by the Europeana project a while ago, and we have really interesting collections, including Margaret Hasselbeck ethnographic research in the Balkans. So yeah, you can go online and have a look at all of those. They are free to access. You can also, of course, join the library, or and archives are free of charge to anybody wanting to consult them. I also just wanted to sort of give you a little bit of flavor of our audiovisual collection, which, as I said, is rather rich and includes not only the pre-recorded visual materials, but also the materials that we have recorded ourselves over the years, which includes news programs, includes the special programs that were, streamed across the region, and we have recorded them and preserved them for future. So part of that collection is also on old type VHS, which you can actually see in the library. And as well as that, we now have a number of streaming services that you can also look at through our website. Now, I think I have run out of time, because there's a bit of a so I won't really have much time to actually tell you some of the challenges, but the challenge is, I think, and was kind of touched upon by all the previous speakers, this sort of sense of responsibility with all the languages. How do you preserve them, but also the burden of history. And as somebody who is meant to collect, from the Balkan literature, the Balkan materials from the Balkans, I always very much felt the burden of that knowledge, and the burden of the local knowledge that's supposed to help me, but at the same time makes everything 10 times more complicated. So, and one of the things within there, which I might just kind of go over 1 minute, is the very unique classification system that we've got in SIS, which is predominantly geographical, which is great, but also imposes many challenges. And one of them is that when geography changes, we need to change our classification marks. So part of that was a project that I'm kind of in the middle of now, which is splitting Yugoslavia yet again. I split it once when I was cataloging it. As I said, I had my journey through all the various jobs in the UCLC's library. So I was the person who originally split the general Yugoslavian collection into all the various countries, but we had still had them all jointly on the shelves. As the collections grew, there is now need to split them again. So from something, there's always another layer of complication there. So what's happening at the moment is the sort of three S solutions, as I like to say it, which is simplify, separate, and streamline to create unique class marks for each successive state. And what we have done so far is to separate existing collections, and the next stage of that is to actually change all of these very complex classifications there into something a little bit less complicated, still quite complex. And the proposition is to do that something along these lines. So hopefully we will get there eventually, and God knows, maybe in future I will be joining it in again. I have no idea. So everything is possible in the Balkans. And as Petros said earlier, it's not fun and games. So thank you very much.
Thank you.